However, candle manufacturer Jennifer Del Bel runs an enterprise called Downlights, where she employs adults who have Down syndrome, and she pays them, she says, the living wage. And she joins us now to talk about pay rates for the disabled. Jennifer, welcome to the show. Good afternoon to you.
Thank you very much.
How long have you been running Downlights?
5 years. And
5
we
years.
employ young adults. Yep. So it's Down syndrome and young adults with learning disabilities as well.
How did you get into that? Did you have a son or a daughter who had Downs?
No, not at all. I had a candle company prior to that for 10 years making candles, and I was introduced to someone who has 2 children with Down syndrome, and he relayed to me how he had applied for over 20 employment positions for his eldest daughter, and people didn't even bother to respond. So I pivoted with the business that I had and saw that there was a real need to support the disability sector, which was really the basis for Downlights, and it's just grown from strength to strength year after year.
Now, candles have become very fashionable. I don't know why, but my children seem to buy them every Christmas and give them away, particularly to the female relatives of mine. Sorry, it's difficult for a man to appreciate, but that's right, isn't it? They're quite... They're a gift of the moment. The different smells, the different sorts of fragrances that they let off, things like that. Is that right?
Yeah, and definitely during COVID times, candle sales actually were quite high because people were home. They weren't going out as much, so creating an atmosphere at home and some sort of ritual around, I'm finished work, now I'm going to put my candle on and cook my dinner with my glass of wine and head into relax mode.
God, there's a wine drinking candle, is there? I must buy that one.
There probably is one called Merlot. I know there's some in America that are called, bacon candles, but
oh, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Now, how many people with Down syndrome do you employ currently?
So we have 4 employees that work with us, and we're a living wage accredited employer, and I sat on the Living Wage Principal Partners Council for a few years as well to support their movement. And we also run a program on Thursdays with the Pegasus unit. We're installed with that at the moment just because I've been unwell, but we bring in 4 young adults from the Pegasus unit each week to help them gain valuable work experience so that when they're finished at Pegasus unit, they have great skills to put on their resume.
Although I've had constituents who have Down's syndrome kiddies and also adults, of course, that they look after, I'm not intimately aware of the Down syndrome issues. But I think I'm aware enough to know that Downs is on a spectrum, not unlike autism in that respect. You can get highly functional Down syndromes and you can get lesser functional. Are you dealing with the highly functional Down syndrome people, are you, as employees?
No. I wouldn't say that, no. We have a different work model. Our entire team, so if I just say team rather than narrowing it to one group, because we also employ young adults with learning disabilities. They all have different challenges, but I've perceived it as my responsibility as someone trying to support their journey to independence, to find the best way to work with them, to bring the best out of them while they're working with Downlights. And it took a commitment from us, but we had support from MSD at the beginning, subsidizing part of their wages for a period of time to help us during the training period. But what comes out at the other end for us is the part that so many people don't recognize or hear about, and that's the part where they're on time for their job constantly. They're not looking at their mobile phone to see who's texting them. They feel valued, and they're so grateful for their employment opportunity that they're incredibly hardworking employees. And, you know, whether Downlights was a candle company with a social conscience to begin with or not, I wouldn't change my staff at all.
No, that's a good point. It's a good point you raise. You, though, are very critical of those employers. There's currently about 1,000 disabled New Zealanders. 900 who currently hold what are known as minimum wage exemption permits. In other words, they work for businesses well under the minimum wage, some for as little as $2, $3, $4 an hour. Do you regard that as exploitation?
Oh, I do 100%. It's a massive step backwards, and I've been working on printing every piece of paper possible to talk to you about this because I'm so passionate about it, so there's something that really needs to be clarified here. The scheme that was going to be introduced last year, the subsidy program, would have taken an employer that was paying minimum wage exemption. So let's say they were paying $10 an hour, as an example.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been responsible for the increase in their wage up to the minimum wage. That was what the government was going to subsidize. So they would have been responsible, and I really hope I'm correct on this, and if I'm not, and you have a caller that can tell me I'm wrong, I'm happy to admit I'm wrong, but I've been trying to research this for weeks to find it out right. So they would have only been responsible for the 3% KiwiSaver increase. So if you have a company that cannot absorb a 3% increase in a salary, why are they operating? What's their strategic planning for anything if you can't absorb a 3% increase? So I question whether their opposition is actually valid at all to us opposing them, because from my perspective, it's complete and total exploitation of labor. It takes away people's dignity. It's, the government subsidizes farming and many other industries. I just can't understand why this has happened. It's such a step backwards for the disability sector.
On the television program that I watched that led to me making this invitation for you to come on, they also interviewed a chap by the name of Martin Wiley. You probably would have seen that as well. And he's the chief executive of Altus Enterprises. They're a registered charity that employs more than 100 disabled workers. So that's a good proportion of that 900. And they pay between $7 and $10 an hour for work that includes, and that's what I saw, the testing of those airline headsets, the packing and flight amenity packs, refurbishing residential power boxes, etc. And he said, if we pay more than that, we simply can't compete. In essence, I think his argument was that this work will go overseas to low-wage economies, maybe Thailand, Vietnam, maybe Fiji, some other third-world country, and that would then deny those 100 people the chance to work. What's your response to that?
It's oh my God, I'm sorry, this gets me so upset. Like I said, it was a 3% difference in KiwiSaver that Altus would have had to pop up. If I'm wrong on that and there's something else, I need to be clarified on it. But taking the work elsewhere wouldn't have happened because the government would have been subsidizing the wages on it. So that's just not true.
So you're saying to me, so let me just get this right. Of those 100 employees of Altus, you're saying to me that the government pays them, for every one of those people that works, a subsidy of how much?
No. So if the minimum wage subsidized fee was going to be followed through in 2024 that the Labour government was trying to implement, they would have taken the wage that someone was making, if it was $10, and bring them up to minimum wage. The employer was not responsible for paying for those additional wages.
Okay,
so how could that be affecting their bottom line?
Well, my understanding is that this government are not doing that.
They're not doing that now, but that was what their opposition was to.
All right, but they're not doing that, obviously, as a cost-saving measure.
So they've gone back to MWE.
But it's also, but it's the status quo, isn't it? I mean, you're talking about a policy that wasn't actually in operation. It was going to be in operation potentially if Labor had been re-elected, but they weren't. So the status quo is that they get paid $7 to $10 an hour without a government subsidy. Is that correct?
That's correct. And
Yeah.
where it gets tricky, and this, is tricky, it has to do with how many hours a disabled